Hey guys, welcome to My Sew Bliss. Today I'm so excited to be partnering with Baby Lock Sewing Machines and bringing you another sewing tutorial. This one's all about how I batch sew, and I'm going to be specifically showing you how I'm going to batch sew my kids' pajamas. I have two young boys and I feel like pajamas can get really expensive and just aren't very cute sometimes, so I like to make my own. And what better way than making a bunch all at once so they can wear them for the next 6 months to a year. Sometimes they wear them longer if I make a big enough size. I'm going to be using a wonderful pattern that I love so much, and I have just been using it ever since my kids were born. It's from Peekaboo Pattern Shop, and I'll put a link down below. I love it because you can do long sleeve, short sleeve, tank top, shorts. So there's lots of variety. So I can make Christmas jammies in these, but also I just made summer pajamas with the shorts version. And you can kind of just mix and match whatever you want and whatever fits your needs or what your kids want. So other than the pattern, I'm going to be using my Baby Lock serger. This is the Vibrant right back here. This is a fabulous beginner serger. I love this serger because it is basic. It helps someone to understand how a serger works, and it works really well. So I sewed all of one of my son's pajamas, and now I'm going to show you how I sew my second son's, all of his pajamas. So I'm going to do most everything on the serger. There's one step that I like to finish it off with a zigzag stitch or a double needle stitch. Usually it's just a zigzag stitch because I like to keep it easy for myself and not have to rethread my machine. And who doesn't mind something a little quicker? So other than your machine, your pattern, and your fabric, I am using elastic that goes with the pattern. It does call for 1-inch elastic. I'm just using 1/2 inch because that's what I had, and it works just the same. But other than that, you're just going to need your basic sewing supplies. So let's get started. The first thing that I like to do is get everything cut out. I kind of do a batch cutting out as well, where I cut out everything out of every fabric that I want to do, and even my elastic, my neck edge, my for longer sleeves, or for pants you have the ribbing or the cuffs and sleeves. So everything's cut out, ready to go and organized so that I can just grab it and go, and it's going to speed up that process a lot. So the first thing that I'm going to do is take my shirt front and my shirt back and match them up with the shoulder seams. And if you want to pin it, great. I've gotten to a point where I don't need to pin it, and with knit fabric it kind of sticks a little bit, so I'm okay with just leaving it. And I will make a pile of all the pieces, putting them right sides together, so that way when I go over to the sewing machine or the serger, whatever you're going to be using, I can just sew this step for every pair of pajamas. So everything's right sides together, and even it doesn't have to be perfectly lined up, because once I get over to my sewing machine I can kind of readjust it. But this way I can sit there and not have to get up and down and go back and forth, but this way I can just sit there and do it all at the same time. So now I'm going to take this over to the serger. Once I'm over at my serger, I'll just start from the top of the pile, line up my pieces, and then start stitching right across my shoulder seams. My first step. And then instead of cutting my threads there, I actually just line up my next one and stitch across that one. And then again, I don't cut my threads. I just take my next fabric, make sure it's lined up, and stitch across. Ooh, I'm going to do this with all my pieces. So I'm making 4 tops. And then once I'm done sewing all of my shoulder seams, then I will go and I don't clip the threads off. I just clip them apart right in the middle. And that way they're going to be ready for the next step, because on the next step we'll get rid of our strings. So I'll go back to my workspace to do the next step. So for my next step, this is the only one that I usually do use pins. So I have those sitting off to the side, and I will just open up my front and back pieces and lay them right sides up. And then I'm going to take my sleeve pieces, and they're already folded in half from cutting. So I just leave them like that and put a pin and mark the center on both pieces. And then I take it right sides together. I am going to place that center pin on the seam, on that shoulder seam that we just stitched. Take it out and then repin it so it's perfectly ready. And then I usually take the edge and line that up as well. Sewing in the sleeve can get a little tricky, and this just makes it a little easier for me to start that sewing around. So I like to do it this way. If you feel more comfortable putting more pins in, that's totally fine, but I usually just do the 3 and then flip to the other side and do the exact same thing. So line up that center with that shoulder seam, pin it, take my other pin and line up the edge of the sleeve with the edge of the shirt, pin that, take another pin and do it to the other side, whether it's the front or the back. And let's see, there we go. Line that up. Okay, so then it looks a little funky, I know, but then I'll just set that off to the side, kind of scrunch it up like that, and do the next one. So I'll just continue to set in all the sleeves with that 3-pin method, and then I'll be ready to serge them. Once I have all my sleeves pinned, then I can just take them over to the serger and start sewing them on. So I just start on one edge, I can take that pin out, and again I just make sure it's lined up, and I'm just going to ease that sleeve. I'm going to extend that a little bit. I just ease the sleeve in a little bit, and with time this gets a little bit easier and you kind of get a feel for it, but you just kind of stretch it along and line it up as best you can. There's my middle. Right along. So then I can still, I'll usually just leave a longer tail at the end and then go to the other side. So I leave all my cutting until I'm completely done at the serger, is typically how I do it. If it gets in the way, then I definitely cut it, but okay. So then I just continue along. Once I have all the sleeves sewn in, I then cut that. And again, I'm just gonna cut in between each shirt and in between the sleeves, so that way they're not connected anymore. And then I'm actually just gonna stay at my machine, because next we're just gonna put it, this whole shirt, we're gonna put it right sides together. So just like this. And I'm gonna go along the side seams. I'm gonna start at the top where the sleeve is. I'm gonna match up the ends of the sleeve right here. This seam right here should match up. That one came a little over. Oh, and I didn't trim that. Trim that real quick. Okay, and then we'll match that seam right there and then all the way down to the bottom of the shirt. So now I can sew that and it'll cut off, the knife on the serger will cut those threads off and any extra fabric. This one came a little over because I was stretching too much, but that's okay. So I'll just trim that off and sew all the way down. And then again, I'm just going to leave a longer tail so that I can still maneuver the fabric and do the exact same thing to the other side. Now, once I am done sewing the side seams, I then trim my threads, and this time I like to do it much closer. So that way they're not hanging there. If there's anything that didn't get trimmed before, I will trim that at that point too. The neckline we're gonna finish off, so I'm not worried about that right now, because now we're just gonna clean it up so that we are ready to put in our neckband next. Once I have those shirts trimmed, next I'm gonna work on, like I said, the neckline. So these are just my neckband pieces, and I'm gonna place them right sides together and sew, whoops, sew this short edge right here. And I'm gonna do all 4 of them right now. Earlier I said I only use these on the sleeves, but I lied. I actually do use them on the neckband as well, and if you're doing pants, I'll use them on the cuff, just because I like to keep these in the center and make sure they get even all the way around. So just keep that in mind. It'll make it a lot easier, no matter how good of a sewer you are. So now I'm going to turn this wrong sides together. So I'm matching up the wrong sides, matching up these raw edges, and I'm going to hold it at that seam we just did and then find the middle point and stick a pin in that. And then I want to find the middle of the back and the front. And usually I just eyeball this, and this is my shirt right sides out, if you can't tell. Cute little dinosaurs. But I'm going to put the part that doesn't have this seam that we just did, I'm going to put that on the front, right sides together, matching up these raw edges. And then the back will go on the back in the middle. Again, right sides together, matching up the raw edges. And that's how I pin it. I leave it just like that. If you need to pin 2 more times, divide it in 4ths, you can do that as well. But then I'll set that off to the side and do my other top. So once I'm ready to sew, I just tuck it under a little bit before the back of the shirt. I like to start at the back, so that way if it looks a little weird at all, it's in the back and no one sees it quite as much. So, and this you just want to take nice and slow and stretch the neckband as you go. Don't stretch the shirt, but just the neckband. That can get kind of tricky, so just watch that as you go. But yeah, I start right before my pin, and then I take my pin out at the last minute. And again, stretching the neckband, and I'll sew along. And you want to make sure you stay even, or you're going to have part of the neckband really short and part of it really wide, the width of it. I definitely did that on my other son's pajamas, but luckily they're pajamas and he sleeps in them, so he doesn't care. So here I'm getting to the front now. And I'll just make sure it's still stretching to fit and take my needle out at the last minute. Ooh. I have a hard time not stretching the shirt, but it really helps when you don't stretch the shirt so that it fits correctly. Here we go. I get to that end, I just sew off the edge, and then I can start the next shirt or just cut it right there, and it'll look like that. Oh, trim this one, and it doesn't look too bad. I didn't make, oh, that one's a little shorter right there. That one kind of was a little wonky, but that way it looks a lot nicer. All the way around. So now I'm going to continue and do that for all my shirts. And if you have sleeves, I would recommend, if you have longer sleeves, I mean, and have a band, or on the tank top you have the band, this is a great time after you do this neck piece to do that. I'm not going to do that on mine because mine are just going to be short sleeves, but this is a great time once you've done the neckband to then do the sleeves. I am actually just going to leave them as is. Typically you would finish off with a top stitching, you would fold this under, and then either do a double needle or a zigzag stitch all the way around, or a cover stitch on the sleeves and on the hem. But for pajamas and with knit fabric, it won't fray, so that actually isn't even necessary. It's more just for looks and to give it that clean finish. Now, if you want that clean, professional looking finish, I definitely recommend doing a double needle top stitch around your sleeves and your hem, but I'm actually just going to leave it as is. This is a little over on this side and on this side, so I might clean that up, and the same with a couple of my other ones on the sleeves. It's not as clean, so I'm just going to cut that so it's straight and a clean line, and I'm going to leave them as is. And that's how I do it so quickly, is I actually cut out those things that aren't necessary for fit or how you wear them, really. So now I am ready to get to work on the pants or the shirts that would go with this. So here I have the pant pieces. I did two pattern, two of the jammies have pants, and then these other two are shorts. My son said he likes the pants more, so I just did these ones because the other ones I didn't have enough fabric, so it works out though. But you're going to start by putting right sides together on all your pieces. So again, I would do the same thing. I would line that up and then take my next set and lay those out, right sides together. So it's really just like how I did the top. So whether you're doing shorts or pants, the first thing that we're going to sew is this curved edge. You don't want to sew the straight edge right here. We're just doing the curved part, and I'm going to do it on either side. So I like to do it, like I said, it's really the same way as I do the shirts, just a few different areas. So then once that side's done, I just flip it over and make sure it's lined up. And do this side. And then once I have all my pieces sewn, I cut my threads. I just cut them in half. And then I take each piece, and this is going to be the same with the pants. They'll just be a little longer. I'm still going to just sit at my serger because it's quicker that way. And I open it up so that those seams that we just sewed are right in the middle and could like overlap each other, just like that. So now they look more like a pair of shorts. So then I just flip them over. It's our crotch seam right there. So now I can line those up. I'm going to line up the edges and then line up the seam I just sewed and go straight across right there. So I will just sew that. Now once all the pants are done and look like this, now I'm ready to take the elastic and pin that on. And I'm actually just going to sit here and do it at my serger because it's quicker and easier that way. But I usually just line up the raw edge and find the middle and stick a pin right there. And then I find usually the center front, but either way, it's not going to be seen. And I pin it on that seam. And then I take that rest of the elastic, make sure it's laying flat, and match it up with the other seam. I do take it over about 1/4 of an inch, and I pin that. And then I'm going to go back and get this side, make sure it's laying flat and it's not twisted. So we definitely don't want twisted elastic. And then I lay it over the edge of the other one. So both raw edges are laying on top of each other about by 1/2 of an inch. And then I just pin it in place, because then I can take it, and once that's all pinned and ready, I can take it and just sew it with my serger. So kind of like how we did the neckband on the shirt, I'm going to start a little bit before the pin. Let's see, don't want it curling. Okay, and I'm just going to stitch that elastic down. And as I'm stitching it, I need to stretch the elastic to fit around the shorts. So it's just like the neckband. Make sure you don't get anything else caught in there. And I'm gonna try and not cut any of the elastic off. And just come up right next to it. And this is a great time to make sure that the elastic isn't twisted at all. Okay, and then again, I'm just going to stretch it to fit around the shorts. Okay, and then we're back to this side, so I'll just trim that. and stitch over it a little bit and go off the edge and trim. And I'll do that with all my pants. And here, oh, we got an extra string right there. And here's what it'll look like on the right side. But then, and this is the one spot where I like to pull out a sewing machine. I just fold this under and either do a double needle stitch or a zigzag stitch to finish that off. And I just stretch it as I sew so that I get that nice finish. And they're gonna look just like that. Once I have done my top stitching all the way around, and I just do a zigzag, my kids don't mind if it looks professional or not. And I just call that good for my shorts and my pants. Usually I add a cuff at the bottom, which I use the exact same method as the neckband. It's just a little bit wider, so it's a little bit easier to put in, but I do that on the pants version. The shorts, I'm actually just gonna leave it as it is. If you want a more professional finish, you can fold it under and do a double needle top stitch or a zigzag stitch, just like we did up here. And this, you could do a double needle top stitch as well. It's just quicker and easier for me to do a zigzag stitch. So that's how I do it so quickly, is just keep it simple. So once you are done sewing all your shorts or pants and all your tops, you are all done sewing your pajamas and you have done batch sewing. So that is how I like to do pajamas or shirts for myself that I really love, like a classic tee. It just makes it so much easier and makes the project go by quicker and speed up, which is awesome when I'm just sewing pajamas and there's not much to it, but it's something that's necessary and my kids need, or t-shirts that I need. So I really love batch sewing, and I get a lot of projects done in a quick amount of time. Like I said, this can usually take me about an hour, depending on how fast I can go and if my kids are around or not. So I hope you guys enjoyed this tutorial. Make sure to give it a thumbs up. If you haven't yet, make sure to subscribe. If you want to see more tips and tricks in my everyday sewing life, you can check me out on Instagram at My Sew Bliss. I'll put links down below for everything I talked about. And if you have any questions or comments, make sure to leave them in the comment section down below. I will see you guys next time. Bye.